we've been being very hostile to human rights. Now let's look at some of the good arguments that were produced. Why do they emerge at the end of the Second World War? Well, obviously, it is the sense that the overweening powers, which the Japanese, the German, the Italian dictatorships had seized, or indeed the Russian dictatorships had seized, and the determination that there should be some means of preventing the state from assuming these profoundly dangerous and dictatorial policies over powers over their own people. That's the theoretical motivation of these things. But what clearly happens is partly because of the device, the abstraction of the language. But I think there's something else, and I would very much like it if you could help me. If we go back again to the first declarations. If we go back, for example, to the European Declaration written by Lord Kilmuir. Lord Kilmuir, when he was Attorney General, is the last great prosecutor of homosexuality in this country. So the idea that the original charters of human rights had anything to do with protecting minorities is, I think, wholly alien to their original purpose.
Right, interesting.
That they were essentially intended to protect the rights of the subject against the citizen, the subject, against the government. That was their essential purpose. But somewhere along the road, where, I mean, you may have an idea on this, they then change their meaning very, very radically. And let me just give you, to juxtapose the business of Lord Kilmuir, let me give you another great legal lord, who is Tom Bingham. Tom Bingham, as you know, is the author of what has become, in my view, deplorably, the standard work on the rule of law. And when he was lecturing on that, the first lecture is given, I think, in 2006, which leads to the text of the book. And then he develops the ideas in Australia in 2007. And there's this extraordinary paragraph, which I think I am quoting accurately, which goes like this. Human rights laws are intrinsically anti-democratic, insofar as they are counter-majoritarian. And they are designed to protect minorities whose rights the majority will not politically enforce. And then he goes on and he lists the minorities: the mentally sick, the asylum seeker, the prisoner.
Yeah.
And if you look at our current scandals, if you look at Kalokane, if you look at Ruda Kabana, these are people who, in the world that I grew up in, would have been in a secure mental hospital from the age of about 13. But of course, human rights. Now, when does this, do you have any idea when this peculiar, I would say it's it really is a genuine inversion. But in other words, if human rights begin as protecting or being intended to protect the ordinary citizen.
Yes.
The ordinary citizen and against overweening power. How, why, when does it suddenly invert?
I think that is the subject of a PhD thesis for sure. I can give some preliminary thoughts. I hope they're valuable, and feel free to jump in if you think that they're not valuable or helpful to what you're saying. But it goes to the Equality Act in a way, because obviously we have a range of sweeping measures in the 90s and early 2000s under the Blair Revolution. Obviously, the creation of the Supreme Court is probably the most salient feature, the Constitutional Reform Act. You have the whole reorganization of the Lord Chancellor position and the appointment system for judges. But you also have at the very end of that revolutionary terror, the promulgation of the 2010 Equality Act. And that brings into domestic law via the Human Rights Act 1998 something called the protected characteristics, which are still quite a mystery to me. And if I had more time on my hands, I would want to look at how they each came to pass, because I believe the creation of the concept of the protected characteristic is nowhere in the 18th century discourse, as you rightly say, because what's in mind is a relationship between a people and a government, and alternately we see subjects and citizens and humanity being kind of evoked as that which is governed. And then government becomes the relationship with the governed that is at stake in the Declaration of the Rights discourse. But in the Equality Act, there is, as you say rightly, there is no citizenry, there's no subject, there's no humanity, there are no people, there are protected characteristics. And where does that come from? Well, if we go to Article 14, I thought it might be interesting to just cite it directly. I mean, you've got Article 17 of the ECHR, which is a general prohibition on the abuse of rights. But Article 14 is the prohibition of discrimination on any, now this is Bentham world, okay? So listen to the wording. On any grounds, such as, so we've gone from any grounds to some recommendations for what constitutes discrimination. And in Article 14, such as, which I would say is not legal wording. I mean, how can we rely on phrases like such as? But anyway, prohibition of discrimination on any grounds such as sex, race, colour, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, or association with a national minority, property, birth, or other status. So sandwiched in this list of grounds on which grounds discrimination is prohibited, we do see references to association with a national minority. And I find it, I mean, I'm interested in other aspects of this list. I'm very interested in the fact that it states that political or other opinion is not grounds for discrimination. It's prohibited grounds for discrimination. Whereas if we go to the Equality Act 2010, domestic law, political opinion is not a protected characteristic. And as you know, and as we've discussed in the past, it's actually codified as belief.
Yeah, as I constantly say, the only things that are protected are things that are not grounded in reason.
Yes.
You have to have a really silly opinion for it to be protected. That would suggest that there was this subterranean matter of as it were, the rights of minorities. But what has clearly happened is that such as list in Article 14 has suddenly grown into a kind of gigantic mushroom, which has pretty well taken over everything. The rest of the convention is now essentially subordinate to that. Isn't that roughly what's happened?
Yes, yes.